Russian brick video is often considered by the average user as one of, if not the most haunting video they've ever seen. But there is far worse out there for the gore community or the desensitized folks watching this. You know for a fact there's a lot worse footage and audio that plagues the depths of the internet. But why I think this video in particular has such a profound and lingering effect on the average viewer is that it completely lacks the visual context of the victim. And what I mean by that is, well, all we're given is what starts as shock, a shattered mind, a cry of a desperate husband, and the gradual realization and sinking feeling that this will be the last time he ever sees his wife, or whatever remains of her. Since the brick, once it smashed through the windshield, it slightly altered its velocity, so it went directly towards her right temple. Now, as some of you might be aware, the temple on a developed human skull is the softest and most brittle part of the skull, so it wasn't a matter of the brick causing a dent or anything, but rather a bloody and gruesome embedding of the brick directly into her brain. So even when we understand the context of the video, we still lack any visual aid or cues that help build the image. So we're sorta left to our imagination, and that's the scary element of the video. The cries of the father mixed with how relatable a car journey is, and your imagination beginning to piece together what just happened, well, let's just say that's the precise formula of an effective horror movie. So, given that I am probably on the spectrum of insanity, I did do some digging and I found a lot more information concerning the video. I have the full video, which will be clipped to the end of this, plus a link in the description for you guys that want to see the video and the provider for itself. I also have the exact coordinates of the incident. Now, typing in these exact coordinates will give you the exact road the incident actually occurred, which happened to be between the highway of Azov and Starominskaya in the Rostov region of Russia. Now, the reports from the emergency services say that in the driver's seat was of course the husband. The victim, or the wife, was a 29-year-old Olga Gaykovich, and there was also a family in the rear which also had a child witness this. Now, given the distance these guys were from home, which was around 1,250 miles, we can assume that they were on vacation. Olga received a severe open craniocerebral injury. Now, the blow was on her right temple, and in minor cases this usually would lead to some tissue damage and a minor loss in motor function. Now, this is very context dependent, but instantaneous fatal brain damage usually leads to motor spasms, so it's likely her major muscle groups were contracting, giving the somewhat illusion that she was in fact responsive. Now, given the spontaneity of the tragedy and the shock induced to everyone within the car, the first action they took, like many of us would, was to check whether she was at all responsive. Now, this is really context dependent, but instantaneous fatal brain damage usually leads to motor spasms, so it's really likely her major muscle groups were contracting, giving the somewhat illusion that she was indeed responsive. But given the blood flow was still ongoing, quickly the scenario became bloody, and in parallel, grief began to take hold. Olga was taken to the Azov Central District Hospital and was categorized as having severe open craniocerebral injury. Now, I don't think it comes at any shock to say that she died 2 hours later. So the transport vehicle was in fact a Kamaz driver, and he didn't even notice that he had killed a person and simply drove on. Police officers did find a car and the driver in Azov, and the police investigated the fatal crash. Quote, "Perhaps we're talking about the criminal negligence of the Kamaz driver, a resident of Azov, who did not provide reliable fastening of the transported cargo." Now, this part is merely speculation, but Given that the brick hit the right temple of her skull and the parietal lobe is responsible for pain receptors, it is quite possible that if some of that brain matter remained, and given that she survived a couple hours after the incident, it's possible she felt quite severe and prolonged pain. But also, given that the brick did hit the same region where the frontal lobe is, where decision making is responsible, it's very likely that despite her suffering, she couldn't exactly vocalize her pain. And so she likely died in agonizing pain, but throughout that period of suffering, she had no way of communicating.
Помогите, что делать? Что делать? Я попала, блядь! Что делать? У меня кровь течет! У меня кровь попала! Мамочки, Бежите! Скорую вызовите! Скорую срочно! Бежите, мама! Обижите! Отпустите, помогите! Я не могу!
На мосту! Какая надежда!
Назад делайте!
Я не умею! Ой, девочки! Ой, боже мой! Ой, боже мой! Тихо, тихо, тихо! Ой, боже мой!
Мамочки!
Тихо, тихо! Сейчас аккуратно, рядом! Ничего не сделаешь!
КамАЗ проехал. Мамочка, мама, что вы сюда приехали? Нельзя вытащить. Вытащить нельзя. Сколько крови!